Texas Baseball Countdown here on KCWX. Chuck McIntyre and Don Harris with you. And it's pitchers night here on our show. We're going to hear from Rangers pitcher Robbie Ross and Astros closer Chad Qualls. And we're also talking to an old Ranger who now toils for the Tigers in tonight's Random with the Rangers segment. Now, after our show is done, it's game 2 between the Rangers and the Tigers. And you can't beat the start to the series in this one, especially for the Rangers, Don.
Yeah, it also helps.
So what about tonight's matchup between the Rangers and Tigers? Well, here's our Texas Orthodontics starting lineup. First for the Rangers, a lot of guys starting to hit. It just seems like the Rangers have had a hard time more often than not, sometimes with the timely hitting, but it's good to see Elvis Andrus starting to swing the bat a little bit better. They've had to move Leonis Martin up to the top of the order, and we talked about it on and off during the last couple of weeks about the amount of injuries they've had. Ron Washington's really had to do a lot of juggling.
Yeah, it's pretty much a miracle.
No, I think so too. And you got to, tip your cap to guys like Mitch Moreland and Michael Choice. These guys are really starting to swing it, and boy, do the Rangers need it. Now, on the other side of the coin for the Detroit Tigers, it's more like who's not swinging the bat for these guys. I mean, Kinsler off to a great start with a bat. Torrey Hunter, the ageless wonder. I mean, he's got a kid playing college football at Notre Dame, and he's still swinging it. Of course, Miguel Cabrera, one of the greatest hitters in all of baseball. And then, for my money, Victor Martinez. I mean, what a wonderful start this guy's off to. He's got more home runs right now, Don, than he has strikeouts. And I don't think anybody's done that in Major League Baseball in like 10 years. So he's really dealing.
Yeah, the things that...
See, now their whole right side of the infield is basically trashed for the rest of the year. I mean, Jerkson Profar had another injury setback, apparently sleeping, hurt the injury that he'd hurt previously.
That usually happens to guys like us, not athletes.
Exactly. So now you're talking about possibly missing another 8 to 12 weeks with this guy. So, I mean, everything that they had done prior to the start of the year, thinking this was going to be the right side of our infield, it's looking like it's going to be null and void. And then on the other side, Kinsler still, to me, is looking like he's doing the same thing he was doing with the Rangers, which is try to pull everything and try to hit everything out of the park. But right now, it's working for him. He's hitting over 300.
Yeah, remember.
Well, we also got a chance to speak with Rangers GM John Daniels yesterday by phone. And the injuries obviously have been problematic all year long, and it seems like there's no end in sight. Outfielder Dan Robertson actually broke 2 bones in his face yesterday trying to make a catch. And we just talked about Profar and the setback that he had during rehab, so he's out at least another 2 months.
John, can you talk about the challenges going?
I don't see that changing.
Alrighty, enough about injury woes and all that. Let's get to our KFC starting pitchers for tonight. And for the Rangers, we got Scott Baker, Don, who's only gotten 1 turn on the bump so far this year. He pitched against the Rockies, and as well as they've done this year, Baker was actually quite serviceable in that game, former Oklahoma State star. And then Anibal Sanchez, great ERA. Tigers just don't score any runs for him.
Yeah, and he here.
All righty, we're just getting started here on Texas Baseball Countdown. Up next, we will visit with Robbie Ross, who's all of a sudden not the wet behind the ears rookie from a couple of years ago. That and more right after this.
Martin comes in and picks up right where he left off.
Yeah, I mean, he really is playing the heck out of center field, too. I mean, he had a really nice throw earlier this week, nailing a runner at the plate. And again, you talk about all the injuries that the Rangers have had. Leonis Martin, young guy, but hey, this is a guy that's now got at least a year of Major League service under his belt. So all of a sudden, he's going to be one of those leaders on this team, the way things are going.
Is it a bigger concern that, we're not seeing old guys getting hurt? We're seeing a lot of the young guys get hurt as well?
I just think it's one of those things. I mean, if you look at the body of work over the last 4 years of the Rangers, they've been pretty fortunate in terms of not having a whole boatload of guys hurt like they are now. Last year they had starting pitching issues. Now it's the whole gambit. But I mean, when they made World Series runs, I think there is one common denominator. When you look at every single team that goes to the World Series, you could say, yeah, they were probably healthy throughout most of the year. Already, Rangers pitcher Robbie Ross made the conversion from bullpen to starter this year after spending his first couple of years as a setup guy and also a middleman. But now he's back in the bullpen after they moved him there earlier this week, which was kind of curious, only because he was actually pretty solid his last time out as a starter against the Blue Jays. But Ross used to be kind of like the team mascot, everybody's little brother in the locker room. Well, not anymore. Ross is still pretty much his easygoing self, but he's also become more of a leader for a guy who's pretty much done that at the major league level.
It's just...
Don, of all the guys in the clubhouse, I think Robbie Ross is probably the most easygoing guy, but it's interesting to watch him, because as soon as he steps between the lines, man, he's a jerk when he gets out there on the mound. He's not afraid to throw inside. He's a battler. You know, maybe it has something to do with his height. He's not the tallest guy in the world, but, you know, easily one of those guys that you like to have on your team. And, you know, I'm a little surprised that the Rangers didn't really stick with him as a reliever. I know he's done really well as a middle guy, but, you know, didn't seem like there was that many chances for him to run out there and look at the whole body of the work and say, hey, you can't be a starter.
You know, and as we talked about last week, it's good to...
Still more to come here on Texas Baseball Countdown. Up next, we're coming back with the Houston Astros. Who's their player of the week? And our chat with Chad Qualls, their closer, and how he's matured over the years, right after this.
Dexter Fowler was the one guy that jumped off of their lineup.
Yeah, and you know, this is the same thing that happened to him last year. He got off to a great start, and then last year he got hurt, and then he had a hard time coming back. This year, he had a great start to the season, then he got sick, had a virus, and I think he was a little weak coming back, but he's starting to bring it, and obviously the Astros are going to need him to keep slinging it in the middle of their lineup. Well, the Astros are still trying to figure out what to do with the back end of their bullpen on a game-by-game basis, but lately they've settled in with veteran Chad Qualls as their closer. Not exactly what he expected at this point in his career. Qualls has played for over a decade and was really a key setup guy on that Astros squad that made it to the World Series way back in '05. He's made 9 other stops since. Do you feel like this is all coming? Up next, we are going slightly old school in our Random of the Rangers segment. Don's going to have some keys to victory for us, and then it's the Rangers and Tigers coming up here on KCWX. We'll do it all right after this. Welcome back. Well, at the beginning of the season, the Tigers were racing out to the lead in their games, but the bullpen was shaky and they had a hard time over the first 2 weeks of the season. Ironically enough, the guy who was struggling early was Joe Nathan, who actually pitched the last few years in Arlington, if you remember. Nathan was really solid for Texas. I think he blew like 5 saves in a couple of years, but Detroit signed him this past offseason. Nathan blew a couple of games early for the Tigers and was solid of late, until he actually gave one up again earlier this week. When we talked to Joe last year in Texas, guess which city he said had the worst restaurants? Without further ado, here's Joe Nathan for tonight's Team Express Random of the Rangers. Which 2 of these would you want on your team? Justin Upton, BJ Upton, or Kate Upton?
Depends what we're looking for. You know, probably if we're looking to win a game, either of the Upton brothers, but probably to make a team better looking, we'll go with the third.
Okay, sweet snacks or salty snack?
Salty.
Star Trek or Star Wars?
Star Wars.
Do you wish you were a left-handed pitcher?
Absolutely, sometimes.
Teammate who never pays for dinner?
Oh man. Go with we'll just say Robbie Ross.
Okay. The worst major league city for restaurants?
Wow. Worst city for restaurants. I gotta think about that one. I'll throw Detroit out. Comes to mind.
Okay, your first paying job?
First paying job was, I was actually a dishwasher. Yes.
How'd that work out for you?
I'm glad I'm not washing dishes.
And the best football team on the planet is?
The New York Giants, no doubt.
All right, Don, thank you very much. Time now for our Maximum Sports Power Rankings, and did a little bit of juggling this week. Let's start with number 10. Welcome back the Toronto Blue Jays. And then at 9 and number 8, our 2 teams from the NL West are actually down a couple of spots, the Dodgers and the Rockies. Then it's the Cardinals, the Angels moving all the way up to number 6, the Braves staying at number 5. Going to move the Brewers down a couple of spots. The Giants stay at number 3. The Oakland A's starting to really tear it up. That's bad news for the Rangers. We got them at number 2. And although it's been a little bit of a struggle this week for the Detroit Tigers, still with the best record in baseball. And they, for the 3rd week in a row, are our number 1 team. All right, we're back to wrap up tonight's show. Get you out to the ballpark right after this.
That is downright nutty.
And that's why it's our Nuts About Sports clip of the week. Rangers, Tigers from Comerica Park. Enjoy the ball game, everybody. We'll see you next week.